Julius Caesar's ruthless ambition and insatiable thirst for power led him to cross the Rubicon River with his legions, sparking a civil war that would ultimately claim the lives of over 100,000 Roman soldiers and civilians. The calculated brutality of this act would become a hallmark of Caesar's reign, as he systematically dismantled the Roman Republic and paved the way for the rise of the Roman Empire. Born into a noble family, Caesar's early life was marked by privilege and tragedy, with the death of his father at a young age leaving him vulnerable to the whims of his powerful relatives. Yet, it was this fragile existence that would foster a deep-seated insecurity and an unrelenting drive for dominance that would come to define his later years. As Caesar rose through the ranks of Roman politics, he proved himself to be a master manipulator, using his charisma and intelligence to forge strategic alliances and eliminate potential rivals. His appointment as governor of Gaul, a region in modern-day France, provided him with the perfect opportunity to showcase his military prowess and amass a vast fortune, which he would later use to bribe and coerce his way to the top of Roman society. The Roman historian Suetonius would later write that Caesar's campaigns in Gaul were marked by atrocities and massacres, with entire villages being put to the sword and their inhabitants sold into slavery. These brutal acts would become a staple of Caesar's military strategy, as he sought to inspire fear and loyalty in his troops through a campaign of terror and violence. Caesar's psychological makeup was complex and multifaceted, driven by a toxic mix of narcissism, paranoia, and megalomania. His famous crossing of the Rubicon River, which marked the beginning of his civil war against Pompey and the Optimates, was a deliberate and calculated act of defiance, designed to demonstrate his absolute power and authority. The Roman biographer Plutarch would later write that Caesar was motivated by a deep-seated desire for glory and recognition, which drove him to take increasingly reckless and ruthless actions. As he consolidated his power and eliminated his enemies, Caesar became increasingly isolated and withdrawn, surrounding himself with sycophants and yes-men who were too afraid to challenge his authority. One of the most fascinating and disturbing aspects of Caesar's psychology was his relationship with his adopted son and heir, Octavian. Caesar's decision to appoint Octavian as his successor was a calculated move, designed to secure his legacy and ensure the continuation of his dynasty. However, it also speaks to a deeper psychological dynamic, in which Caesar sought to create a miniature version of himself, a loyal and obedient protege who would carry on his work and fulfill his ambitions. The fact that Octavian would later go on to become one of the most powerful and ruthless leaders in Roman history, ordering the execution of thousands of potential rivals and opposition figures, suggests that Caesar's influence extended far beyond his own lifetime. As Caesar's power and influence grew, so too did his paranoia and mistrust of those around him. He became convinced that there were plots and conspiracies against him, and he responded with brutal force, ordering the execution of anyone suspected of disloyalty. The Roman Senate, once a powerful and independent institution, was reduced to a mere rubber stamp, with Caesar using his authority to dictate policy and crush opposition. The atmosphere of fear and intimidation that pervaded Rome during this period was palpable, with even Caesar's closest allies living in constant terror of his wrath. In the end, it was this very paranoia and mistrust that would prove to be Caesar's undoing. A group of senators, led by Brutus and Cassius, conspired against him, driven by a desire to restore the Roman Republic and eliminate the tyrant who had destroyed it. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, Caesar was stabbed to death in the Roman Senate, his body left to lie on the floor as his assassins fled in triumph. The aftermath of Caesar's death was marked by chaos and bloodshed, as his loyalists and opponents clashed in a series of brutal and devastating civil wars. And yet, despite the brutality and bloodshed that marked his life and death, Julius Caesar remains one of the most fascinating and compelling figures in human history. His dark psychology, driven by a toxic mix of ambition, insecurity, and megalomania, continues to captivate and horrify us, offering a glimpse into the darker aspects of human nature. As we reflect on the legacy of this complex and flawed individual, we are forced to confront the darker aspects of our own psyche, and the terrible things that we are capable of inflicting on each other. The memory of Julius Caesar serves as a haunting reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and ambition, and the devastating consequences that can result when we allow our darker impulses to guide us.